Hello, church. It's so good to be with you today, and I hope that you took time to catch Ryan yesterday as he led us in a new series called Trading Truth for the Lies. We are living in a world right now where everybody seems to have their own truth. There's no such thing as absolute truth in this world anymore, and whatever little bit of truth that we have out there, people seem to just be trading for lies. It's a great series. I look forward to the next 6 weeks of the preaching team cranking this out. So I do hope that you took time to catch Ryan's sermon. It was awesome. So, all right, we find ourselves in Colossians chapter 4. We're in verse 7. So it says, Tychicus will tell you all the news about me. He is a dear brother, a faithful minister, and fellow servant in the Lord. I am sending him to you for the express purpose that you may know about our circumstances and that he may encourage your hearts. He is coming with Onesimus, our faithful and dear brother, who is one of you. They will tell you everything that is happening here. Right? So every time that you find a name in the Bible, it is because nobody's name dropping. This is not like doing the Kardashians, right? This is not about name dropping. It's not about famous people or these kind of things. But they're mentioned by name, then there's a really good chance that the audience and or the first century reader of this letter is going to know exactly who they are. So let me share with you for a second that Tychicus, besides being a servant to Paul, is also part of the 70 that are mentioned in Luke 10. So when Jesus sends the 70 out to do ministry, he is one of those people. And so in other words, in the first century, Tychicus would be a rock star. He would have been an early disciple. And so to find him in this position of what I would call shadow servanthood, where he is just behind the scenes serving with Paul. He's been in jail with Paul. He's been beaten with Paul. He just fell in behind Paul as Paul began to do ministry. Whereas easily he could have been a kind of guy that could have gone out on his own, could have done his own thing, could have had his own disciples behind him and all the things, except we find him in this place of shadow servanthood. And so here's what you need to know. I think that ministry is a group deal. You're never alone, which is essentially what I want you to hear. Ministry is always a group activity. Now, there are individuals in ministry, obviously, that do ministry things, but where you find ministry advancing the kingdom of God, you're going to find that you are never alone, that you are in it with others. And this is a classic example. Furthermore, it's an example of us reading past these sections at the end of these letters that appear more like Paul giving a bunch of shout outs than it is about informing them of ministry. So Tychicus has a specific purpose for coming to the church at Colossae. He's going to report on how Paul's doing in prison. He's going to let him know what's going on and how things are going. But you also notice that in this letter, he says he's bringing someone with him. He's bringing somebody called Onesimus. Now, if you've ever read the very, very short letter to Philemon, you know Onesimus is a slave. And what we hope is by this writing, he is a former slave and that he has been set free and is now serving with Paul as well, right? So this is another name people would have known. So notice that you have Tychicus, one of the early disciples, and you have Onesimus, who is a bondservant, a slave of somebody else's in the kingdom that people would have known. So these two people are side by side doing what? Ministry together. Ministry together. So here's what I love. Our world is full of fame hounds. Our world is full of fame hounds, people seeking their 15 minutes of fame. It explains all our social media stuff, really, in some ways. It's amazing to me the number of Christians who have started Christian blogs and Christian letters and TikToks and blah, 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 blah. All seeking what? I would love to say seeking the glory of God, but oftentimes I think these are fame hounds. What you have here is an example of a guy who's just, again, could be a rock star in the first century, but has chosen shadow servanthood instead. So church, as we read this passage, as we think about it in isolation, I think that you have to ask yourself, are you chasing Christian fame or are you chasing faithful servanthood? Think about our church for a moment. You know, there's obviously some of us that get up and preach, myself, Ryan, Eric, Janice, Jason. We've got a number of prayer leaders that get up on Sunday morning and pray. We've got a band who certainly are very visible every Sunday morning. But apart from those people, what you have behind the scenes are 100 shadow servants that are going about it. Hospitality ministry and ushers and greeters and parking ministry. Dear God in heaven, we should be bringing Frosties to our parking ministry, for crying out loud. It's so hot outside. You have Sunday school teachers, you have hospitality ministry, you have men's ministry and women's ministry. You have all these shadow servants behind the scenes. You have our relief team that is out there doing ministry. None of these people are chasing fame. They're just building their resume of faith, stepping up to do what God has called them to do. So that's our goal, is to be shadow servants, to not be fame hounds and chasing that, but to chase after Jesus and to serve him in ways that only he can do, right? God has gifted you. Where are you using that gift in the kingdom? All right. I love you, church. I look forward to being with you again next week.